As the next step in our introduction to our broad topic here of Greek and Roman mythology, I thought it would be good for us to take a look at a real ancient hero and focus in on that character and then talk about that for just a second. So soon enough, momentarily, the lecture is going to pause and then there's going to pop up a screen with a link on it. Just click on that link, have a look at the pictures there, and then come on back to course and we'll talk about what you just saw. So, wait a minute, you're saying, that's not a real ancient hero that we just saw. That's just this guy, Kevin Sorbo, who played Hercules in a campy United States version of a TV drama for kids back in the 1990s, produced by Sam Raimi. Sam, excellent, good work there. But you kind of wonder, this has nothing to do with this course, right? This is just a version of the hero that has nothing to do with the ancient version. I mean, when you look at him, he's got this wispy hairstyle that's clearly an artifact of his time. He's bulky like a hero would be, but his muscles are not chiseled. He doesn't seem to be too violent. He's kind of approachable. He seems to be kind and gentle even. Ancient heroes are tough, and there's a lot of blood, and they're cunning, and they're nasty, and they're extraordinarily effective in this kind of business-like way when it comes time to getting down to business. This guy doesn't seem like that at all. So that can't have something to do with our course, can it? Let's advance a little bit and take a look at another version of this figure we're talking about. Okay, you will recognize here another version of what Hercules is all about. In this one, we're thinking to ourselves, well, this looks a little bit more ancient. There it is, carved in stone. That's something that's clearly ancient. Looks like he's kind of a chiseled figure and a little bit frightening. Okay, fair enough. And we see that he's got a lion skin there, and there's a club right next to him. And knowing what we know about Hercules, that's clearly, these are aspects of the real Hercules. So this thing must be closer to what the real Hercules is all about than that Kevin Sorbo thing that we saw. So all seems to be a little bit better. But let's take a little bit of a closer look at this representation. Well, first of all, what we have in front of us is actually not a statue, is it? It is just it's a computer image of a representation of a statue that was originally, you can see you're looking at the details involved, an etching. And this etching is made in the 19th century. And looking over the details of this particular figure, focusing in on the middle parts, for example, there's a fig leaf right there. Well, the Greeks didn't do fig leaves. At the time that this etching was made, it seemed to be that the parts in the middle were thought to be a little bit naughty. So they were covered up. Well, Greeks and Romans didn't think that. So we've already got kind of one remove from our, what we think is going to be our real hero. We'll take another half step back and think about this for a second. The etching that this is a representation of on your computer screens was itself made of some real ancient statue. Isn't that true? Well, yes and no. It was made of a Roman version of an ancient statue. So we go back one more representation, and the etching is made of a real Roman statue. And the Romans had ideas about Hercules. In fact, they invented the name Hercules. He was made up on a Greek precedent, the Roman figure, who dates back well before the Romans. So if we're looking for the real Hercules, we're going to have to go back earlier than this Roman statue. Well, the Roman statue is actually a copy of a Greek original that exists many hundreds of years before this, the Roman statue that made up the subject matter for our etching here. So the Greek original, that must be where the real Hercules lived, right? And in fact, knowing what we do know, we'll turn back the page one more set of centuries and see that the Romans are the ones that invent the name Hercules. They base it on a Greek original, but the Greek original is pronounced differently. It's Heracles. Close enough, but that wasn't a euphonous-sounding Roman kind of name, so they just went ahead and changed it. So if we're looking for the true Hercules, we're going to have to go back to Heracles, which is the Greek original on which the Roman copy is based. Well, taking a liberty and assuming that our Roman copy is a utterly faithful Roman copy of a Greek original, we're thinking to ourselves, okay, so we've got a etching of a Roman copy of a Greek original statue, and that Greek original statue surely must be what the real Hercules was about. Well, there's another problem with that. The Greek original on which the Roman copy was based only dates from the end of classical times in ancient Greece, and really doesn't relate to mythic times for the Greeks. Those were already many, many centuries prior to classical Greece. So where's the real Heracles, and where are we going to find him? Chances are we're really never going to find him. Myth is a story that is always being retold. Searching around for some original moment, some originary version from which we can then talk about all the others as just being made up accretions. We're not going to be able to do that. We're not going to find ground truth when it comes to myth. In fact, I think myth defies our attempts to try to find some pure, authentic representation of any of the great stories that we're interested in. Myth is always going to be not just a telling, but a retelling. These stories have existed functionally forever and have been told and retold over generations. The subject matter that they focus on has to do with our figure right here, this amazing person, Heracles. Look at his strength, his capability. He's got right there his lion skin next to him as a trophy for a wild beast that he killed. He's got his club, so there's violence involved. There's edginess to what we're going to see. These heroes are utterly capable. Their hands are incredibly strong. They just get stuff done. And they do it without thinking a lot about things. They're crafty, they're clever when they need to be, but when things need to get done, they just get it done. Our heroes are going to be someone that we spend lots of time talking about. And when we talk about our figures like Odysseus, or we'll talk about Oedipus, or any of the other Orestes, any of the other figures we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about versions of them by different poets, different myth tellers who go ahead and add their version of the story to long traditions. We're never going to find the very original one, as we've already talked about. Homer, that great poet, Homer, was already working in a time when lots of traditional versions were around, and his versions became extremely authoritative, but it's not anywhere the case that we're going to be saying that Homer is the kind of final answer, or Ovid is the final answer, or Virgil is the final answer. All of the different versions of the myths we're going to be seeing are just that, they're versions, and they're going to help us get a window into what it is we're looking at. Now, in terms of subject matter, we're going to see lots of stuff in these myths. The thing that probably is most prominent in all of them is you and me. This species of what it is to be human. This kind of question of what it is to be human is going to animate these storytellers and bring them to some of their highest heights. We're pretty amazing creatures. I mean, look at this fellow right here. It seems like he's going to hurl that discus 5 miles. It's an amazing physique, beautiful form, worthy of representation. Not only can you appreciate the physical form behind the representation, but then you can also add a certain wonder at the representational art itself. Humans are capable of the great feats that this fellow represented is, and also the feat of artistry and representation that the artist who made this statue represents for us. So we're going to be front and center. We, as humans, the human family, are going to be front and center in our myths. We're also going to spend a lot of time looking at this little fellow and his brethren, pigs, cows, bulls, animals of all kinds are going to populate our mythic stories. They're interesting to these ancients. They want to know how these animals tick, and particularly where you and I as human beings fit in relation to them. Also, there will be times when you and I as humans are going to rely on animals to help us out. We can see here a famous characterization. Those of you who already know the story of the Cyclops will recognize Odysseus using a ram to help him escape the evil attack of the monster, the Cyclops. And you and I as human beings are going to rely on these animals to help us, and having some connection with them is a beneficial thing. Heroes demonstrate that they have that. So we're looking at humans, we're looking at animals, and then lest we think that that line between the two of us as groupings is distinct and utterly is never transgressed, just have a look at the figure behind me here. Famously represented in Greek art, you'll know there are these creatures that are half human and half animal. They're looked at with usually a certain kind of spookiness to them. They might have a role to play in society, but they're not quite like you and I, and we don't hang around with them, but we do hear about them, and they will populate some particularly interesting corners of our mythic tales. Now on the other side of us, on the one hand we've got the animals down beneath us, and then the half human, half animal mid-level creatures. On the other side we're going to meet the gods. The gods typically appear to us in visions, so when we see mythic times representing a kind of usual interaction between humans and gods, the gods will come down disguised. They may come down in dreams, they may come down in a vision during the day with some kind of disguise on, so they're representing themselves as if they were a mortal girl or an old man or whatever it might be. These disguises let them walk among us without us quite knowing. Usually what we'll see in the myths is that the smart people, the smartest people and the greatest heroes, they kind of know anyway. They can kind of tell when the gods are around. Dumb people never can. But when those gods are around, they have important things to do. And they're interested, interestingly, in you and I. This figure here, a pretty imposing guy. Hello, Apollo. The fact that I'm looking at him eye to eye right now is already an offense. Sorry, Apollo, I didn't mean to do that. You don't want to get Apollo mad at you. Gods are going to exist up there. Yeah, they'll come down, we'll see visions of them, but mostly their world is not our world. You and I are different from the gods. Real humans, in order to really know what they're all about, know that they're different from the gods. And when they speak of the gods, they speak with awe, reverence. The gods are in a world apart. And we usually don't see eye to eye with them in any way. We try to keep our distance in a respectful way. And when we do have interactions with them, the gods call the shots. They control what's happening. And you and I need to always respect that. Now, another class of beings that we have to get ready for before we move on, this fellow right next to me here, we saw Odysseus escaping his cave in the earlier slide. Our friend here, the Cyclops, you can see the eye in the middle of his forehead. This guy is going to run into some nasty treatment in our epic. We're going to read Homer's Odyssey in a kind of nice, slow, and deliberate way the first few weeks of class. And it'll give us a wonderful introduction to all kinds of mythic themes. It'll also introduce us to some of our most memorable scenes of ugliness in ancient myth, including our monsters. And this figure, the Cyclops, is among the most famous of those. Cyclops, poor guy, one eye in the middle of his forehead. He's giant, he's huge, he's very strong, but he's just not too bright. Makes the mistake of crossing Odysseus, and you don't really want to do that. It's a bad thing. Odysseus gets the better of him, and we'll have occasion to learn all the details of his story when we move through the Odyssey. Now, I wanted to take a little bit of a minute taking a step back and thinking about, so what does it mean to study myth in a contemporary world? In our class, I mean, we're obviously not quite in the ancient past, are we? We're quite a far bit different from them. You and I live in a world of microchips, where our interaction right now has been enabled by almost fantasy-like scientific technology that's so extraordinarily sophisticated that all of us are rightly in a sense of awe and wonder at our own capacities to connect with one another. It's really amazing. I mean, I say this with utter sincerity. The world that we live in is absolutely different from our mythic world. It has its own magic and its own amazingness. And it's built on, isn't it, this sense of connection and interconnectedness. We live in a deeply networked world made possible by the technology of silicon, such as you see behind me. Now, it's also the case, though, that in the past there have been other times when people have talked about the deep connectedness of their world. Let's just back up here and have a look at our scene. As imagined in the 1930s, it was thought that, yes, indeed, people out there in the wider world would benefit from the knowledge of our Tweety professor here. I seem to lack facial hair, but I hope to be as authoritative as this person looks in the representation. Looking up at a technology called the blackboard and using something called a television pickup and a transmitter, he's going to beam out from his university all the wondrous knowledge that he has to share through the technology of the television receiver and the loudspeaker. There'll be people out in their homes who are gathering that information from the professor, and amazing things are going to happen. Now, having a look back at this picture and the fantasies of the 1930s, that vision of connectedness that animates this picture, well, surely at the time it was understood to be utopian, transformative, quite amazing, and like nothing before, because all of a sudden we were able to use this medium of radio waves to send signals all the way across the air. What we now look at look to silicon to do for us, to make us interconnected, back then they were amazed by the capacity of air to make us connected. Well, this actually prompts us to maybe take a second look at this ancient world and ask ourselves, well, yeah, sure, we're different, but how different exactly are we? We're connected, you and I, by silicon. That lets us have our interconnectedness. Back in the 30s, it was radio waves. Well, back in Homer's day, there was indeed amazing technology available to people to stay connected, to actually make contact with people in distant, faraway lands that they'd only ever heard of, that they may never have met before, and that no two human beings from these cultures had ever even seen one another. The technology they used was shipping, and they used the medium that they used was the sea. The Mediterranean Sea is another kind of character in our story of Greek and Roman myth. It is a great connecting force in the ancient world. A recent scholarly treatment of the Mediterranean Sea dubbed it the corrupting sea, which is a wonderfully apt description of what role the Mediterranean plays in antiquity. Those who are searching for purity of culture, for example, we're going to peel back the window on some pure Greek or Romanness through this course, are probably looking for the wrong kind of thing. The purity in the ancient Mediterranean is ephemeral. It doesn't really exist. Cultures around the great Mediterranean basin are always interacting with one another. It's part, we think, of what makes the Mediterranean such a special place, is its interconnectedness. A connected mind is an intelligent mind. And the Greeks, yes, were indeed interconnected with cultures all around the Mediterranean via shipping lanes that had been trading for many, many generations before our historical record starts. They had contact with cultures in the far western Mediterranean and definitely in the far eastern Mediterranean. And if you think about it and go around the Mediterranean in your mind, say that you went to Rome and rented a motorcycle, think of all the amazing cultures that you would see, from the Italians to the French to the Spanish to the North Africans. Ancient Carthage you would pass on your way past North Africa. You'd go to Egypt, the ancient Near East, the Israelites. You'd see Turkey. You'd see back to Greece. Just extraordinarily rich and ancient societies. Now, each of them has their own distinctive ways of doing things, but all of them share this Mediterranean background. And as we press forward in our course, we're going to see not only that the stories that that we're concentrating on give us a window into Greece or Rome, they're also going to open us up to broad Mediterranean themes that are relevant across this body. Now, what we're going to do for most of the course is focus in this area. You'll notice my Greek and Roman mythology class has mostly Greek with a couple of weeks closing on the Romans. That just happens to be my expertise, so that's what we're going to be focusing on. So we're going to spend a lot of time looking at this Greek world and understanding how it works, its different ways. Some of the things we're going to see are going to remind us of things that are immediately accessible to us. We're going to understand the kinds of moves that are made, the kinds of values that are being held. Other things are going to be exceedingly strange. We're going to wonder how in the world they could have thought that, or how in the world they could have valued this over that. So keeping track of both what's similar and what's different is going to be one of the most interesting pieces of what this course is all about. What we're really going to be doing is joining our friend here, Oedipus. Hello, Oedipus. We are, yes, indeed, I think in many ways quite like Oedipus insofar as we're just trying to figure something out. We're curious by nature. Human beings like to know stuff. And Oedipus is a wonderful example from myth of someone a human being on a quest for knowledge, trying to figure this out. Here he is interviewing the Sphinx. And indeed, sometimes, like Oedipus, we're going to get the better of the world, and we're going to figure out more than the Sphinx ever knew. We're going to solve the Sphinx's riddle and make it go away. We might win one or two of these contests of knowledge. But then also the story of Oedipus introduces us to some other things. We human beings, because of our ignorance, are going to make mistakes. Mistakes will be a theme in our course, the mistakes that people make, and we'll also, in our own attempt to piece together this rich, complex world, are going to make our own share of mistakes and try to figure it out. But I think back to that theme of connectedness, the connected mind is an intelligent mind, so let's all stay connected, and we're looking for your own jumping into the course through the forum and other ways for us to share what thoughts we have on this vibrant ancient world of mythic stories.